Hello, good morning. Thank you for tuning back into the channel again. For this week's video, I thought I would shoot the video on location, so to speak, rather than at home, you looking at my pretty face. That was a joke, by the way. So, look, I want to kind of keep it a little bit short today because I'm out and about. But the message, I wanted to kind of pedal on this particular video, is around, the realities of sin. Now, I know that it's something we all like to ignore because we're all busy. We all like to, create our own truth, so to speak, decide what's right or wrong for ourselves, but that's not the way God sees it. God is real, God is divine, God is invisible, God is spirit, the supreme ruler of all the spiritual world. And, back in the day, when mankind fell, because of Adam and Eve, the devil tempted, Eve to take a bite of the apple, and that was the moment mankind fell into sin. That's how death got a foothold into the world, and how sin got a foothold into the world. Now, it's highly, the only way I could think of is contagious, not in a good way, sin. So, when somebody sins, they can cause other people to sin. And I don't think there's enough. I don't think that's talked about enough, in the church or in biblical circles. And also when people sin, you can cause judgment or punishment to come not just upon yourself, but also upon other people within your family circle. Because the thing is, when you sin, you basically step outside of God's protective covering. And when that happens, that allows the devil, Satan, etc., and his forces, demons, who are fallen angels, to kind of get access to your life. Now, if they can't get access to you directly, maybe you might be a born-again Christian, then they can get access to, other members of your family and wreak havoc, havoc and hell that way. So, but it's really dangerous, and a lot of people believe mistakenly that, sin is like this kind of bilateral thing between them and God, and that, what I mean by that is a lot of people believe that, if they sin, then, only they will take the punishment for that sin. That's their decision, but that's actually incorrect. Although it's broadly true, it's not correct enough. Basically, when you sin, you open a door to the evil one, unbeknown to you or them. And, evil forces can, like spiritual, invisible evil forces can get access to your life, often through the back door, through other family members. And, it's important to be aware of this because, if you can be more mindful, when you're going about your daily life, about the things that you do, the things that you think, the things that you know are wrong, and decide not to do them rather than go ahead and succumb to that temptation, then you'll be more protected. You'll be actively closing the doors to the enemy rather than opening the doors to the enemy. Because, whenever you sin, and, sin can be anything from, outright deceit to sexual sin to, adultery to, the list goes on. You leave your own imagination to take over. But when you sin, and a lot of people like to pretend that sin doesn't exist and that we're all free to do whatever we want. One of the common things that I hear in the secular world is this kind of quote that life is short, let's just enjoy ourselves now and do what we want. But that's a lie, you see, because if you just look around you at some of the high profile billionaires and millionaires, Steve Jobs died at 58, there's countless billionaires and millionaires that die each year, and as well as, famous people, famous actresses, famous pop stars, famous influencers and politicians and kings, presidents, you name it. And they all, perhaps, got a bit too comfortable with the good life and, money on tap and a lot of celebrity status and media attention. But, life comes from God. And, if you don't honour God, if you don't respect God, if you ignore God and just try and brush it under the carpet and kind of create your own truth of living out of this nonsense that you can do what you want without any... See, let me just share this with you. One of the biggest lies is because, people can't see God. God is spirit, right? So, just in the same way people can't see the devil, people can't see the God. But these spiritual entities are there. And, whether you accept it or not, they can see what you're doing. They can see what you're doing in your life. They can see what you're doing in the bathroom privately. They can see what you're doing financially privately. They can see, what is going through your mind, what is playing on your heart. They can see everything you do, So if you're trying to diddle somebody out of some money, if you're trying to, have this kind of extramarital relationship, if you're trying to, secretly slander somebody, you see, both God and the forces of evil, i.e. which the Bible calls Satan or the devil, they can all see this, you see. And I suppose one of the, again, this is a matter of opinion, but the idea that you can just do whatever you want is in my book absolute nonsense, and that's backed up biblically as well with various scriptures. So, look, I'll probably talk for too long already. I think I've got my main point across. Just be aware that what you do in a typical week, a typical month, or a typical year. Be aware that the spiritual world can see what you're up to. And the more you sin, the more that sin builds up against you. It's like a debt, okay? Now, if you don't believe in God, specifically like Jesus Christ as the Son of God, the Saviour, the redeeming Saviour, then you're unprotected, you see? And that debt of sin builds up against you. And there's multiple scriptures in the Bible about this, that, sin, when it's fully grown, breeds death, And a lot of people... maybe perceive themselves to be doing well, or others have perceived them to be doing well because, they've got the money, they've got the house, they've got the car, they've got a beautiful wife and the kids and everything else, and the credit cards and, all the rest of it. And people have thought, these guys, this person or this family, this unit, this household is doing well. And then all of a sudden, catastrophe hits and, death strikes. And then people say, rest in peace. He was a great man, or woman, may he or she be remembered. But, the reason I'm saying all of this today, and it's not to kind of make you feel bad, it's just to make you aware. It's all about awareness, education and awareness. If you're sinning and enjoying the life of sin and pleasure, whether it's, fraud or, sexual sin, having many partners and all the rest of it, and cheating people out of money, God sees that, the devil sees that, and you need to be aware. If you're aware, you can do something about it. You can think, well, you can recognize the temptation when it comes. I'm sure all of us can relate to that when we're tempted in a certain way, whether it's sexually or financially or the love of money or the greed of money and power and stuff. When we're tempted in a certain way, we can learn to recognize it and that we are being tempted and make a conscious decision to do something different that doesn't align with that or snare us or allow us to fall into that trap. And if you can do that, and it's not easy, it takes a lot of discipline, a lot of awareness, but if you can do that and make yourself more aware of the temptations and the consequences of sin, then you'll be better protected. So I'm going to wrap up there. Thank you for listening and watching, same thing. I hope to see you on the next video. Yeah, I'm filming on location today, so Just bear in mind what I said. You know, I'm not here to make your life a misery. I want to help you, but you've got to help yourself. Okay, so you know, it's no good just going to church once a week and then sinning for the rest of the week, and you know, and continuing the cycle. You know, the whole purpose of the gospel, and the whole reason Jesus came, is to break the cycle of sin, break the cycle of, you know, death and the rule and reign of sin, Satan, and death. So I'll shut up. I talked far too long. So I hope to see you on the next video. Have a great Sunday. Take care. Look after yourselves, and just remember what I said. Be more aware of the temptation and the sin and the things that hold you back. Okay, so take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.